Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Having a sort of admin day. Just spent some time playing with my notes, and a column that I don't look at is where the plant came from, because I very rarely need to. Once I've actually put that data in there, it just sits there until such time as the plant gets given away, sold, or dies. One of those three, anyway. Not so many of the dying lately, but it did dawn on me that you've heard me refer to the big box orchids. Well, this was a lady, Beatrix, who was moving back to her homeland, basically, and couldn't take her orchid collection with her, and said, would I mind looking after them? And at the time I said, yes, that's fine, thank you very much. Didn't quite realise what I was going to get, because it was a box full, to say the least. And that was actually backed up by Big Box Junior later last year, sort of November time, I think it was. So 2 lots of orchids from one place, and then I decided to go through and have a look. And I've got a lot of orchids that have been gifted. I feel very, pleased that people can do that sort of thing. Now, don't all rush out and do it again. At the moment, I have enough orchids, and I am slowly but surely getting a list of those to go to make some more space. As I said, I don't only need space for new orchids, which are very thin on the ground nowadays, but for those to grow on. They don't stay the same size, do they? They get bigger. I mean, the growth I've had on my cattleyas last year and even on through the winter means I've now got a full shelf. I now need a second cattleya shelf. And it's basically going to be this one. Because I've noticed recently that for one reason or another, I've got shelf space lower down here. These shelves are far from full. They're quite thinly, populated, I suppose is the word. And even this up here is quite thin nowadays. So by moving some of these lower down, the reason most of these are up here is because they're tall. But I do have a little bit of tall space lower down. And most of those up the back, well, all of those up the back are oncidium types of one sort or another. They don't need the highest light levels, they'll bloom fine in, the lower shelves. So I'm going to have a bit of a sort out, and then some of the cattleyas can get over in that corner where they've got a light source coming in from both sides. They'll get full light all day long. That's probably even better than this tall shelf, because now that I've got quite a few larger mounts up there, they're getting shaded. Yeah, so as the light comes in from this way, these mounts are in the way now, because I've got a lot more mounts than I used to have for a start. I mean, this lot up here is just a tangle at the moment. But, yeah, going through the orchids that have been gifted, it's nice when that sort of thing happens. But as I said, don't all rush out and try and do it again. I'm quite fussy as to what I get in nowadays. It has to have a good reason to be here. Not like a rescue off a flipping supermarket shelf or something. I'm not really interested in doing that sort of thing. Now, I have said before, my Latorias suffered badly last year with the heat wave and my inadequate humidity. With the humidifiers I had last year, they were inadequate, quite honestly, in that level of heat over that period of time during our longest days, or some of our longest days. I mean, we're only a few days off reaching 16 hours of daylight now. Some of these poor plants need sunglasses on. They're not used to that length of day. Most of them would never see a day length more than 11 and a half hours, so 16's a lot. But yeah, some of those Latorias did come out of the big box, and they struggled a bit at first, but they weren't doing bad into the beginning of last year, and then the heat wave hit them before they'd really got established properly. And with the lack of humidity, they went down a bit. But I mean, this little one up here, this came out of the big box. This is growing on nicely. I think this is, what is this one, Tetragonum? Yeah, Tetragonum. And I mean, that's been grown from a seedling. You can see the tiny little bulbs, and the bulbs are gradually getting bigger. I did actually have a bloom on one of the growths a while back. And at the moment it's producing some new growths with some more roots, so it's getting bigger, gradually becoming more established. I'd like to see another bloom on that soon, I must admit. Now, putting these types on a mount is only just tolerable during the growing season, because the mounts dry fast, and during the growing season these shouldn't dry out, they should just keep growing. You know, they are continuous growers in their natural environment. It's only because my winters cool down that they slow down naturally, and I reduce the water accordingly. But these are a struggle to keep up with on a mount, but nonetheless a lot of my Latorias got mounted on the grounds. It's the only way I think I can look after them properly in the winter without them staying wet. I mean, this is an example of one that went right downhill last year and lost most of its leaves. It looks in a right sorry state. But since it was mounted, we've got a couple of new growths starting. No new roots yet, but they'll come. I mean, it has got enough roots to just about stay hydrated, but it will push on some more. Oh, no tag on that one. When I mounted the Latorias, I was very sloppy on the old tags. So they're not labelled effectively. I could go back to the video and try and work out which one's which. But one day, hopefully down the line, they will bloom again, and then I'll know which one's which. And I'm not in a rush to find out. I mean, this mount had 2 put on it. The one at the top's just started a new growth and has new roots coming out. The one at the bottom's doing new roots, but no new growth yet. But they're now growing, so they will come back, slowly but surely. What's this little one here doing? Nothing. Oh, yes, it is. It's just starting some new roots. But they all got themselves in a sorry state. And on top of that setback during the summer months, or spring really, they never really got going, and of course then they went into my winter with the much cooler temperatures, and they were potted up as though they were going to be continuous growers. A little bit of ignorance on my part. They don't grow cool, so during the winter they stopped growing, they slowed right down, and I had them in a media suitable for continuous growing, like oncidium types. Small bark with quite a bit of moss. Of course, they just stayed wet in the winter, and wet and cold for that type of orchid does not compute. So they lost their roots, basically. Well, there is one of the big box orchids. There were a couple of little, what I thought were Cattleya seedlings. This one is, it's got an interesting little name. This is Little Lemon Drops, but it's crossed with an Encyclia, Betulina, species Encyclia. And looking at its size, you'd say, oh, it was a Cattleya seedling. But Beatrix said, no, that's a true miniature. And lo and behold, it bloomed on the growth that it put up. It's doing it again. Now, its previous blooming, which looking at the size of the plants, this has been grown on from a seedling. Again, the tiny little pseudobulbs gradually getting bigger, telltale sign. And it bloomed on its latest growth last year. First time for this plant, I would say. And it had 2 buds and 1 blasted. But we had a flower. I'll put a pop up. But we're doing a bit better this time round. That's a good spike. And these are very attractive blooms, so I'm really looking forward to that one. So that one's doing well. It pushed out quite a few new roots a while ago, and yeah, it's a nice little plant. And although it will grow new bulbs, that's their size. Nice little bifoliate, smashing little plant that is. And there's a couple of other small ones that came out of the big box that probably are seedlings. This is where we do guesswork now, trying to hang it up. When it goes around the back like that, you just have to sort of like aim and fire and see if you get it. And if it falls down, then you missed. Yeah. What else was there? I mean, this came out of the big box, and this was not a happy plant when I got it. This really did look sorry for itself. And I mean, it's been in bloom absolutely ages, and there's more buds coming on canes that haven't bloomed before. It just keeps wanting to bloom. And these larger canes at the top that are losing their leaves now, that was last year's growth. It pushed on really well. Those will become the blooming canes of the future. And then up the top, we got this year's new growths. 5, 6. Now, some of those technically are kikis because they're coming up away from the base of the plant. Some are coming from the base of the plant. But they're all close enough to the mount for the roots to get into the mount. There's good active root growth on there. I am well pleased with that. I mean, it's gorgeous blooms. And I mean, that one just keeps going. We'll have some of that. Now, out of the big box, none of the Oncidium types made it. They all were DOA, basically. I mean, its transport was in an absolute bitterly cold period of the winter, you know. And unfortunately, they then went through my winter, which is pretty cold, came out in the spring, and then we had the beast from the east, the big freeze, you know. So they all had a bad start in life, quite honestly. This is a strange one, if I can get at it, if I can get this flipping monster out of the way. Well, I call it a monster, but monsters like this I will put up with. That's probably going to our meeting at the end of the month. It's still looking good. This was one that was, quite honestly, it looked dead when I got it. Oh, this has got tangled up now. Bit of shake, there we go. Now, what I had was one long cane, and strangely enough, it almost looked identical to what it looks like now. It had 2 kikis. Now, I took those kikis off and planted them at the base of the plant. Those are the 2 shorter canes here, yeah? And it's now pushing out 2 new growths. Now, this one does not like high light. I've moved it now. It's round the back of a rack with its back to the light, and other mounted, you know, the pieces of wood are actually shading it now because it was starting to get a bit purple. But it's growing, and I now have 2 more kikis, which I may well take off and plant at the base. And the long cane that looked dead has actually grown, and it's now getting a bit silly as far as its length is concerned, because technically that cane stopped growing and then started into growth again, which is an abnormal growth pattern. So I think that cane is a lot longer than it ought to be. It would be great if it stuck some roots out there. But at some point that really long cane will probably have a haircut, because wherever it is, it keeps catching itself. And the 2 little kikis, have they stopped growing? No, they've got some signs of life, so they may grow a bit more yet. And then the 2 new growths at the top. Now that one's got a strange name that's not on there, but this is effectively a rock grower. This is a lithophyte in its natural environment, and it grows on limestone sort of outcrops and places like that. So this is, in theory, this should always struggle because it's not getting its right pH environment. But plants are adaptable. It's growing. It's doing okay. I'm not going to try and get that one back up there now. Yeah, so yeah, some of the big box plants have come on. They're doing okay. There was some if you see, this is you know, I've always said that some of the plants, as they die, their colours all run together. I'll put the pop-up of what this is supposed to look like, but it's dying now, and all the colours have run and smudged. It actually looks quite attractive, but it's not long for this world. Half of this bowlful came out of the big box. Yeah, so there's 4 plants in there, 2 potfuls, and both potfuls had 2 plants in, a larger one and a smaller one. So half of that came out of the big box. I can't get at everything. There's a little dendrobium round here that came out of the big box, which is a little sort of unknown thing, but it's grown a lovely new growth. This is a Jarrack Firethorn Brownie. I don't know whether that's a long way off blooming or not, but to me that looks like quite a young plant. But it's growing, you know, it made it. That's the important thing. What else have we got? There's several of the larger Cattleyas came out of the big box, and some of them came out of Big Box Junior. There's one up round here that I mounted. Oh, come down. You're not going to come down, are you? I really should have used thicker wire on that. Come on, down you come. And this is This is Genmanii. Now I mounted this one, and it promptly grew a nice new growth and started a new root system. Now it's got a proper root system. There's nothing wrong with that. The roots going all over the place. And it's now starting another new growth. Now, not knowing how big this needs to be, but unlike some of the others, this is a division, yeah? Because all the bulbs are roughly the same size, yeah? So this was cut off of a larger plant. And this would be a classic one to actually cut the rhizome and see if I could get the back end to shoot out, although there's no active eyes there at the moment. But the front end's doing well, and if this is its full size, which it looks like it is, it may well bloom on that next growth. It didn't bloom on the previous one, but who knows, we might get some blooms on that one. So that one was out of Big Box Junior, so I haven't had that one long, obviously. You're going to go back up? Yes. So, yeah, a variety in here, and I can't even find them all because, you know, they're all dotted around. But yeah, I think we're going to have to find some more Cattleya space because these are now getting a bit shaded, so I need to rearrange some mounts up there to let that light through from that side. It gets the light all afternoon, right into the evening, but it would be better if it got it in the mornings as well. Comes in through the roof this time of year as well because the sun's quite high. But yeah, I think we're going to have to spread the Cattleyas out a bit because obviously there's a double layer here. The ones up the back there against the glass, they get the best light, and they are the ones that need the best light. They are selected, not just randomly plonked up there. Things like my purpurata is up there, my anceps is up there. So I think by thinning this out and moving over there, the ones that go over there will get more than enough light. They'll be brilliant over there, and the oncidiums that don't need that level of light can just find other places. So having a bit of a shuffle round. I mean, this shelf up here has been sort of taken over by Cattleyas, although there's still the Phalaenopsis dendrobium up here at the moment. But yeah, shuffling round time. This one came out of the big box. That's bloomed, had a couple of spikes earlier on. That needs repotting now. And I've also got one over here, which overnight has ceremoniously dumped its blooms on the floor. Go on then. Yeah, there we go. Get tangled up in the Phalaenopsis, why don't you? But although that cross is the other way round, I don't need both. So this one can go. But I'm not letting it go as it is. I'll show you why. Now, this hasn't happened since I got it. The plant was like this when I got it, if it's going to come out. I've got room to plonk it up here, yes. The older part of the plant has some really bad markings on it. I actually took this into the Orchid Society for a diagnosis, and they said that looks like when the growths were young, they got bitten. They had insect damage, and then a secondary infection set in, which has sort of marked the leaves permanently. And those marks have grown with the leaves. So they may have been tiny once, but they've grown with the leaves. And most of the older part of the plant is like this. Well, I'm not giving it away looking like that, because if I received a plant looking like that, I'd be worried. I didn't realise it was like that when I got it. But if you come round to the newer growths, they're okay. So this has got a large base to it, this plant, and it's growing in two directions. These two growths are next to each other, but if you follow them back, one's up that end of the plant and one's up this end of the plant. So when I repot that, I'm going to try and split it in such a way that these older pieces just get discarded. And I'll probably end up with two small new plants. And again, that needs repotting, so you know it's about right to do it now. Although I don't see any new roots at the moment or new growth, so I may wait a while. But yeah, the pieces that are left will be two, and that'll be two to go, providing I can get rid of these older bits. If I can't split it in such a way that I can remove these naturally, then I will take the canes off at the base. Because I'm not letting a plant go looking like that. It's worrying. You know, it really is worrying, and these are badly damaged leaves. They haven't changed. They've been like that years. That's just the oldest part of the plant. But the newer parts of the plant came out okay, you know. Not too bad. We have got some marks on that one as well. Anyway, I will deal with it. That one I actually bought, that particular one, the one out of the big box, which has the same flowers, all virtually identical, that one I'll keep because it was a gift. Yeah, so quite a lot of gifted plants, and the admin going through the notes really is a combination of several things. It's looking for things that, you know, were gifted, which remain permanent. If I'm given a plant, I like to keep it unless it actually dies. You know, I'll keep that in the collection. And I mean, some of the ones I've been gifted, I might not have even chosen to buy myself. But you keep your gifts. Here's another classic example of a gift. This is Dendrobium Comet King, a nobly type, and this has been struggling for ages. This was a gift from Rachel. Came in with the holy clay pots actually, and mounted it, and hey presto, I've even got roots coming out of the oldest cane. But more importantly, I've got a nice new growth and some roots. That never did well in its pot. Well, it is now. Don't all rush out and rip all your dendrobiums out of their pots just because a couple of mine have done particularly well. It may well be, because it was Kiki's when I got it, it actually stayed in its pot quite a long time. And Kiki's should be treated differently to the way you would treat a more mature version of the same plant. You know, like Noblies should be quite dry in the winter. Yeah, well, don't keep your Kiki's dry. They need to be pushed on. Unless they naturally stop growing, then they need to be pushed on. So, you know, it was in a media appropriate to growing it on. And it probably may have stayed in there a bit too long, because obviously it would be kept moist. So, anyway, just a chit-chat. Sherry Babies opened up nicely, and I've finally worked out what went. When I repotted the Sherry Babies, split them up, and the Peter Comp and several other things, I think I did the Miltonia Sunset. It was a massive session, I know. And I ended up with lots of smaller pots with plants in that were all Oncidium types, and they all look the flipping same, quite honestly. And 2 pots have got their tags round the wrong way. So even though this one's tag says it's Peter Comp, it's not, it's Sherry Baby. But then somewhere there's one with a Sherry Baby tag that's actually Peter Comp, if you see what I mean. So I haven't lost the plant, just don't know where it is at the moment. That's not lost. Lost means gone forever. This is just misplaced. So I've still got the plant, and I'm still waiting for a reasonable root system before I can post that one off. So, yeah. And the person that's waiting for it is also due some Kiki's. Oh! So getting down here isn't okay, but it's getting up again. These are they're still growing on, and I've got something else in there that I don't know what it is, because these are Hercoglossum Kikis in here, but that isn't. That fat cane there is not a Hercoglossum, but I don't know what it is. See, the tag on there says Findlayanum. Well, that's the one that has the bulbous canes. And I stuck the Hercoglossum Kikis in there, but then didn't post them because I'm waiting to post the 2 things together, obviously. So I've got to watch these, because that is a Findlayanum, but that's a Hercoglossum. And that is something entirely different, and I haven't got a clue what that is. But I don't want lots of containers with Kikis in, so they all got stuck in the same one. Also in my notes, I noticed I've got 2 Spring Dreamer pollens, and I haven't. I've only got one, which is this one. So I must have got rid of mine. I know I got rid of the biggest plant, and then I had a smaller one, a division, and then I had this one. And the reason I've kept this one is, again, this was a gift, and the others weren't. So, and I don't need lots of Spring Dreamer pollens, but, you know, this one's coming back into growth now, so I can grow this on. I've had my Spring Dreamer pollen for years. It's bloomed well, it's grown well, and quite honestly, it's quite nice sometimes to just take a piece of a plant or whatever and grow it on, yeah, rather than just having a plant doing the same thing year in, year out. It's nice to have a change now and again. Well, and a bit of a challenge, I suppose. So, yeah, just a chit-chat. The chrysotoxum up the back there, I'm debating whether to keep that. But I don't think I could post that. That is absolutely enormous. Just think how big the box would be. I mean, the plant, including the pot, is nearly 3 feet tall. And then there's the width as well. So, but although I found the blooms highly attractive, that's a lot of plant for less than 3 weeks worth of blooms. That's how long the spikes last. They're very short-lived. So at the moment, that's up for debate in my mind. I don't know whether I want to keep that long term or not. Anyway, you know, these are the decisions. You know, I can't. That's probably not going to get take up a huge amount more space ever, circular space, and it's not going to get any taller. It will just get bushier in the space it occupies, and it has space where it seems to be happy. So, yeah, maybe I'll keep it, maybe not. I also went looking through my notes. I seem to have acquired quite a few Miltonias recently. One was given to me by Lynn as part of a swapsies thing going on, and 2 others. One came from Alberto when he gave up his collection to go and work at Kew Gardens, and another one was a present at Rithlington last year. So that's 3 new Miltonias that I didn't have before. So I suddenly seem to have quite a large set of Miltonias, whereas before I only had 2 or 3. This little dendrobium bloom looks like it's just about to start to open, so that's doing well. The original little bloom, I can't remember, that opened in January, I think, or February. It's still going. Plant is only just starting to grow. It's not doing that well, but you know, that's going to be silhouetted at this time of day as well. So the problem is out there we got bright sunshine and the camera can see it, so everything in here is dark. If I turn round here, it suddenly goes bright again because it refocuses. So half of this is going to be silhouetted, I expect. Anyway, gifted plants. In actual fact, this one that's just going out of bloom, that was in the big box. That's a Stardust Firebird. I got rid of my own because it was in such a sorry state, and I can just see some signs of growth coming at the base of here, which is typical. Not always, but quite typical in a lot of plants. As the blooms fade, it thinks about growing some new growths. Yeah. So this nobly type, the wedding bell, it's in full bloom. It's only got one tiny little growth at the base. So, you know, I suspect that's going to start producing more new growths when the blooms fade. It's just the way some of them go. And this lovely infundibulum cross, the odd little bud is just starting to open as well, so that's looking nice. Yeah, so stuff going on, stuff to think about. To say, quite a few of my Latoria types went downhill badly last year. I'm hoping they're going to pick up again. They're all still here, haven't lost any. And Hibiki, let's get that where it's not going to be silhouetted. Let's just move it over here, somewhere there, that'll do. Perch there for a minute. Now this has got new things going on in lots of places. And quite honestly, they look like new growths. Oops, there's the birds dropping moss on the roof off the gutters. But on reflection, I'm not sure these are new growths. I mean, I wouldn't expect a new growth to come out there for a start. And I mean, this cane's got another one here, here, and here. I wouldn't expect those to be growths this far down the canes. So I'm not quite sure what this is up to. We might have some buds in amongst this lot. And there's another little one there on that cane, and another one there. So the older canes are pushing out things. There's another one there. And a lot of these things are quite far down the cane. That's not the normal position. I mean, you can see Hibiki's new growths I mean, there's a new growth there pushing on nicely that's not at the base of the plant. It's slightly away from the base of the plant. This one round the back is just off the base of the plant. This one's at the base of the plant. This one's at the base of the plant. So's this one. But what's that? Is that a new growth or is that buds? We will have to wait and see, but the good thing is it's doing stuff, you know. We'll wait and see what the stuff is, but I reckon in amongst there should be some buds. And as we know from last year, once we get buds, they seem to last for absolutely ages. So we'll see how that one goes, but it's coming on. Did have a problem with this cane though. That went really strange, and as a consequence got chopped off. I'm not chopping the whole cane back to the base, even though it's, you know, it's obviously been cut in half. The reason being, it's quite a maturing. It was a maturing new growth. That was the largest of last year's new growths that grew on through the winter, and then failed miserably. But nonetheless, it's possible that that part of the cane could bloom. So I'm leaving it there. It's not doing any harm. So we'll see what that one does. And stuff going over, obviously the dendrobium's going over. It's just ceremoniously dumped them on the floor, or unceremoniously. The apple blossom is still going, but I don't think it's going to be going much longer. Obviously this one's gone now, the Pradit spots. Have to wait for another one to form on that. The big bush, the Hancockii, that's literally down to one bloom now. This was the last one that opened, so that's going to be out of bloom till next year shortly. Tolumnias, I got one with a new spike coming up in the gods up there. I don't bring them down till they're in bloom. The Europhila's looking nice little blooms on there. This one's just about to finish. This one's not far off, and it's got a tiny little branch on there, maybe two, so that might continue a bit longer. This is a branch, and this one's finishing soon. So very soon we won't have many Tolumnias around again, but they're growing. That's the main thing. There's new growths coming out on virtually every one, even the ones that were in the sorry state after the severe scale attack that I had on those. So stuff's coming on. I got two Deesa spikes. I've got one here that's pushing up, and I've got another one here. So some of my Deesas are going to bloom. Apart from the Naevium over here, which was Odontoglossum, it's probably now an Oncidium. I've only got the Shelob Tolkien spikes there, two spikes coming on, and the Shari babies. Those are the sole representation of all my Oncidiums and Miltonias and various intergenerics that are actually doing something. All the others are just growing, basically, which is good, but not blooming, not yet, anyway. Mr. Hairy up here, what are you doing? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a bud. So we may have a bloom. It might end up being two. But it's starting some more new growths now. There are some tiny ones, like down in there near the top. And some of the ones that started growing in the winter are pushing on. Some have actually finished. They're not going to grow any bigger. But they were winter growths. Quite honestly, the blooming on this one is going to be geared up to those two large canes next year. I don't think it's going to bloom. It may bloom on some of the smaller ones, but those are two good strong new canes there. And that one that's just starting to lose its leaves with the yellowing leaves on it, that looks like it's got a bud, just the one. So we may get a bloom. There's another nice new growth starting there as well. So it's growing, and it looks like it might have a single bloom. One bloom is better than no blooms. Ugh. And I've got if I get round here, if I can get at it. This is my new row up here. These are all Oncidium types that have been mounted, which is a new thing for me. I haven't mounted Oncidium types very often in the past. There's a selection up there. There's some Twinkles, Miltonia, that's an Alisara on the end. So an assortment of Oncidium types mounted, and they're in good light position there, and with that amount of moss around the bases, they can be absolutely drowned this time of year, but I'll have the ability to keep them a little bit drier in the winter if they're not growing. So it gives me choices, basically. And I've even got some quite big ones. Another Miltonia there. That one bloomed last year. That's pushing out new roots on its new growth, so that one's coming on. And I've got this huge thing up here. This is a recent acquisition that was stuck straight on a mount. It's funny, actually, when I let go of Shari Baby, when I got this plant, it looked enormous and it looked good. And then when I looked at it a bit closer, look how many leaves have been chopped. Look how many leaf tips have been cut off on that plant. So it wasn't grown that well. At some point, it had suffered. Now, at the moment, those will become old leaves down the line, probably later this year. Some of them may even fall. But we got new growths coming out of this everywhere. Everywhere you look on here is new growths. They're all over the place. Some good strong ones coming up the rear and out the side there. So I mean, that one's growing like mad. It loves being on that mount. And that is, what is it? I think that's the pink twinkle, I think. I must start putting tags on plants. The tiny twinkle up here, this one ran out of moss. The moss became so old it got dead flat, and I wasn't hydrating the plant well enough, so I put some new moss around it. And now the new growths that are forming on this one will have something to get their growths into. Yeah, so this one again is pushing out quite a lot of new growths. So most of the mounted ones, we're not going to see any blooms on there for some time because they're all coming into growth. Well, those growths have got to mature yet, haven't they? So we're looking at late season, probably late autumn or into autumn before they bloom. So right, I'm going to leave it at that. That was a wandering chat about almost nothing. But yeah, it's just appreciated when people send you plants. And it's appreciated enough that they will stay in the collection as long as they live. They can stay, because every time a plant like that comes into bloom, it makes you think of the person who sent them to you. That's nice. I like that sort of thing. But as I said, I don't want any more. Not at the moment. Yeah, we'll see how we go. Now, I'm still wondering whether to bother keeping this thing. This is this something or other nocturnum. Is it an Encyclia? No, Epidendrum nocturnum. I mean, look at this new cane. It's a stonker, bigger than anything else, and that's what it's been doing. It's gone from that one to that one to that one. And both of these have spikes that have extended already and opened again. But as fast as the bloom opens, it self-pollinates, and I'm lucky to get a day out of it. And it takes up space. Yeah? Now, I've heard or read that when they get to large mature plants with many canes that come into bloom together, the blooms may not self-pollinate. But while it's only producing them one at a time, it probably is going to self-pollinate every single time. So to have a plant that takes up that much room that I just don't get blooms on, well, again, it does bloom, but there's no, a one-day bloom is not exactly a spectacle, is it? It took me 2 years to even get a picture of the flipping thing. But it does grow. It does grow well. Lovely, strong, healthy cane there. Still, decisions to be made down the line. But we do what we can. These two are going to go. Now, strangely enough, since they got the lava rock in them, they haven't grown a single new root. These are the Rhynchostylis giganteas. But they're both producing new leaves. But I just don't like the plant. So those are probably going to go. They will probably go. It's a big basket. It's clumsy, and one of them did bloom once, and quite honestly I wasn't that impressed. It wasn't as fragrant as I was expecting. So I've had it quite a while. They've had their chance, so they may well go. I'll take up a bit less space with that basket out of the flipping way. Yeah, so, you know, you make your decisions as you go along, and I've probably got a dozen plants that are on the list to go, some of which may even be split up. My nice little maxillaria back there's going mad. Well, I can take some pieces off of that and let somebody else have one. You know, I mean, it's not costing me anything, is it? I paid for the plant years ago. That's forgotten, you know, so that can be, pieces can come off of that to go. Pieces can come off of this, the polybulbon. Beautiful little flowers when it blooms, you know, but, you know, there's pieces that would just snip off of there with a pair of scissors, go in an envelope or something and arrive at somebody else's place to grow on. Grows like a flipping weed, that thing. But it's one of those, when you see the flowers for real, you like them. There's just no getting away from it. The colour combination, the fragrance is gorgeous. It's a sort of, smells a bit like marzipan. It's the closest thing. It always reminds me of Christmas when I get near that anyway. A Christmassy smell. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. That was a total ramble. Tomorrow, is it tomorrow? I can't remember whether it's this Sunday coming or next Sunday, but the Bonsai Society I used to belong to, I'm thinking of starting to go again, not to their meetings, because I find those a bit boring, but they hold a Sunday workshop once a month, which is just that. It's just a group of people with a load of tables, making a hell of a mess, trimming their trees, chatting about them. And it's the place I learnt the most, not at the meetings. I found that I wasn't learning a lot of the meetings, but at the workshops, you know, you've got people actively working on trees, and they're getting advice from the experts, and you can listen in. It's a great learning environment. So I'm thinking of just taking mine in for a haircut. I don't really need any help with them, but it's just to join in. It's a social event, and it's on a Sunday morning. If it is tomorrow, hang on, let me just stop the camera and go and have a look. Yes, it is tomorrow, and the workshops are in the morning. They're sort of 9 o'clock till 1 o'clock. So I'm 95% certain I'm going to be going to that. So my Sunday morning chat tomorrow will be late. Obviously it won't get posted till towards the end of the day. In fact, I'm going to change my mind. This is being filmed. You have to excuse that buzzing. I've got an enormous fly in here, which is that's going to get got in a minute because they annoy me. I'm actually just going to stop this video and call it my Sunday morning chat, I think, because it is a chatty video. It's about all sorts of things. And yeah, so this can now be stored away and posted before I go to the workshop tomorrow, so I have a Sunday morning chat video, which is traditional. As this was a general chit chat, it should suit that thing well. And if I can, I'll find something for today, which is Saturday, a short one perhaps. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.